They say every city has its shadows, but in Lagos, there is a story that people whisper only when the night is deep and the streets are silent. It is the story of a man no one dared to look at twice, a man whose laughter echoed like broken glass, and whose sack was never far from his side. At first, he seemed like any other madman wandering the crowded streets, dirty clothes, wild hair, muttering words no one could understand. But there was something different about him. Children swore they saw the sack move, as though something inside it shifted and breathed. Traders claimed that whenever he passed their stalls, their goods spoiled, milk curdled, and fruit rotted in a single night. Some said he was cursed. Others believed he was no ordinary man at all, but a vessel chosen by forces too dark to be named. Whatever the truth, no one dared confront him. It was easier to turn away, to pretend that the stench from his sack was nothing more than old rags or rotten food. But one evening, as the market closed and the streets emptied, a sound erupted from that sack, a sound no human should ever make. Those who heard it froze where they stood, their blood turning to ice. And when courage finally overcame fear, when the sack was torn open under the dim glow of a lantern, the truth spilled out, raw, terrifying, and unforgettable. The madman's laughter grew louder, as if he knew the horror all along. But the most chilling part was not what they found, but what he said afterward. What secret did that sack truly carry? And why did his words sound less like madness and more like a prophecy? Long before the highways of Lagos roared with engines, and long before the towers of glass pierced the sky, there was a smaller Lagos, alive with traders, fishermen, and children whose laughter carried across the lagoon. It was a city of rhythms, the pounding of drums at dusk, the calls of hawkers in the markets, the rustle of palm leaves in the evening wind. Life here was not easy, but it was known, steady, and deeply tied to tradition. In the heart of this world was the sprawling Obalende market, a place where fortunes were made and lost under the blazing sun. Women sold spices so red they looked like burning coal. Men carried baskets of smoked fish with eyes that still seemed to watch, and children darted between stalls chasing after coins and laughter. By day, the market was a sea of color and noise. By night, it grew silent, its shadows stretching long and dark, as though the earth itself exhaled and grew still. Among the traders was Mama Nkechi, a woman whose stall overflowed with ground pepper, yam, and palm oil. She was respected not only for her goods, but for her wisdom, the kind that came from listening closely to the old tales told by elders. She often warned the younger traders, "Not every madness is madness. Sometimes it is a mask the spirits wear." Most only laughed and waved her words away, too busy with their sales. Life, for the most part, flowed like the lagoon waters. People rose with the crow of roosters, prayed to their gods for blessing, and worked until the sky turned crimson. Families gathered in courtyards to share meals and stories, tales of trickster tortoises, powerful hunters, and spirits that lurked in the forest. These tales were meant to entertain, but they also carried warnings about greed, about arrogance, about ignoring the signs the ancestors placed before them. And then there was him, the man with the sack. At first, no one remembered when he arrived. Some said he had always been there, drifting like smoke in the alleys. Others swore they saw him walk in one rainy morning, drenched and laughing to himself, clutching a sack so tightly it seemed bound to his very flesh. He had no name that anyone knew. People called him the Madman. By day, he sat near the broken walls at the edge of the market, muttering to the air. By night, he wandered, sack slung over his back, singing words that belonged to no known song. Children dared one another to follow him, but none lasted long. A smell trailed behind him, thick, metallic, like iron left to rust in blood. The villagers learned to live around him. He was like a bad dream lingering in daylight, unpleasant but ignorable, until the whispers began. At first, it was only the children who spoke of it. They claimed they heard voices in the sack calling to them in the dark, sweet voices, like mothers coaxing their children to sleep. But when the children drew closer, the voices turned sharp, promising things no child should ever hear. Soon, even grown men claimed that when the madman passed, they felt chills crawl up their spines as though unseen fingers brushed their necks. It grew worse. A sickness spread through the market. Chickens were found headless, goats refused to enter their pens, and women miscarried in the night. The elders called it coincidence, But when Baba Ifa, the oldest diviner, threw his cowrie shells, his hands shook. He saw symbols he would not name aloud. He only whispered, "This is no sickness, this is a hunger." The villagers grew restless. Some wanted to chase the madman away. Others feared that touching him would bring ruin. And still, he laughed as though he knew their terror was the music he was waiting for. Every night he carried that sack into the forest, returning at dawn with its weight heavier, dragging deeper lines into the earth. Then came the night of the storm. The sky split open with thunder. Rain fell like shards of glass, and in the chaos, the sack finally tore. Inside was not food, nor rags, nor anything the villagers could excuse. It was a human head, eyes wide, lips moving as though still whispering prayers. The villagers screamed, some fainted, others fell to their knees. The madman only danced in the rain, his sack wide open now, showing not one head, but many, stacked like offerings to a god none of them worshipped. Then came the worst of it. The heads began to speak, not in unison, but each in its own voice. Traders, hunters, mothers, people the villagers knew, people long missing. And from their mouths came one name, a name tied to an ancient spirit of famine and vengeance. The madman stopped laughing. His eyes rolled back and his body twisted as though a hand from within the sack pulled his strings. When he spoke, it was not his voice, but something older, deeper, heavy as the earth itself. You ignored the signs. You mocked the warnings. Now the debt must be paid. Panic swept to the village. Some fled into the forest, never to be seen again. Others ran to Baba Ifa, begging him to act. The diviner gathered the villagers who still had courage, and together they performed rites older than the market, older than Lagos itself. Drums pounded, fire blazed, and words of power filled the air. But the sack pulsed like a heart, its whispers growing louder, drowning out the chants. The ground cracked. The air grew thick. And from the sack rose a figure, tall as the palm trees, cloaked in shadow, with the faces of the dead flickering across its chest. It reached toward the villagers, its hand wide enough to blot out the firelight. Baba Ifa stood firm, chanting until blood spilled from his lips. His body shook, but his voice did not falter. With one final cry, he called upon the ancestors to intervene. The spirits shrieked, a sound that split the sky, and then it was gone. The sack lay empty on the ground, torn and smoking. But the madman was nowhere to be found. When dawn came, the market was silent. Stalls stood abandoned, goods spoiled, and families wept for those never seen again. The sack remained, a husk of cloth and ash, untouched by anyone. The elders decreed it would never be burned, never be buried. It would remain where it was, a warning to all. And so life resumed, slowly, painfully. Children were told the story of the madman and his sack, not as entertainment, but as a reminder. Evil grows where warnings are ignored. Years passed, yet some swore that on stormy nights they still heard laughter echoing across the market. Some swore the sack was not empty at all, that it waited patient for another to claim it. And so the folk tale spread, carried by tongues and drums, across villages and cities. Its lesson was clear. When the ancestors speak, you listen. When the spirits warn, you obey. For the line between madness and prophecy is thinner than a thread, and once it snaps, no one escapes the consequences. So tell me, if you saw a madman on the street today laughing with a sack on his back, would you dare to look inside?